Hello everyone, yate. This is Peter Desert III again. Chkachi nishle, kile chini bashashin ashin rishe and toy heglini rashanala. Yesidan asha a Lukachigai. My relatives are from Lukachigai. And my dad was a former council delegate for Lukachigai. Chanelist, he was Peter Desert Sr. He was a council delegate for Round Rock Community. They actually served together during the same time in late 70s, early 80s. Okay, so I had some people asking me to explain the resolution where the council was asking for a comment, and I put a little video out about it a couple days ago. Okay, so this is regarding the CARES Act that was sent from the U.S. Treasury. Okay, if you look at the law, it says Section 1 is the authority. So A says the governing body of the Navajo Nation, which is the Navajo Nation Council. B, the Navajo Nation Appropriations Act states, okay, what goes on to talk about the money being deposited into the general fund, unless it's otherwise designated by Navajo Nation Council. Also, it talks about the standing committees that has to go through. It says WK Ticket, Budget and Finance, and the Law and Order Committee. Okay, so that's the top part of that resolution. The findings, okay, so it talked about the World Health Organization and the public health emergency because of COVID-19, talking about highly contagious, and the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic, and this was on March 11, 2020, okay? So it goes a little bit further, March 11, 2020, Navajo Nation Commission and Emergency Management, along with the President and Vice President, declared a public state of the health emergency on the Navajo Nation because of COVID-19. Okay, so it just gives you some background. C says Navajo Nation Department of Health issued public health emergency orders, including 2020-01 on March 18th, okay, because of the outbreak. Also 2020-002 dated March 19th. And then 2020-003 dated March 20th again. So it goes through and gives details, it gives background to what's going on. This section is kind of long, but basically it's setting the tone of it. And as of May 5th, the Navajo Nation Health Command Operation Center has confirmed a total of 2,474 COVID-19 cases in the Navajo Nation and 73 related deaths. So it's basically given background. So then it goes to say March 27, 2020, the Coronavirus Relief and Economic Securities Act, CARES Act, was passed, Public Law number 116-136. It's 134, Statute 281, 2020. Just saying what this is and public law where is found. CARES Act, at Title 5, subsection 501, entitled Coronavirus Relief Funds, attached as Exhibit A, set aside $8 billion in emergency aid for tribal governments for the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so it's just giving all these background and lining it up. The CARES Act provides the coronavirus relief shall be used to cover only the costs that are necessary expenditures incurred to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19. So these expenses have to be related directly to COVID-19. Also, it says we're not accounted for in the tribal budget most recently approved as of March 27, 2020. Okay, it can't be already in the budget. Also are incurred from March 1, 2020 through December 30, 2020. So March 1 to December 30, the end of this year. So on April 22nd, 2020, U.S. Treasury issued Corona Relief Fund guidance for state, territorial, local, and tribal governments. Okay, set the guidelines for it. All right, and I talked about this as well in another video where Sean McCabe and his associates talk about the guidelines that the money needs to be spent on. I'll attach that link below and you can get to those details from the auditing and accounting perspective. Okay, under the CARES Act, this is H. The Department of Treasury Inspector General has authority for monitoring the oversight. Okay, this is a lot of the oversight of it, how it's going to be monitored and stuff like that. So that's H. So make sure you read that in more detail. Okay. I, the Secretary of Treasury, in consultation with Secretary of Interior and Indian Tribes, was tasked with establishing the methodology to determine the exact amount and one tribal government would receive based on tribal governments increased expenditures relative to fiscal year 2019 on May 5th, 2020. Okay, and again, it does talk about the distribution of $8 billion to tribal governments. So May 5th, 2020, U.S. Department of Treasury and Interior issued the press release entitled Joint Statement by Treasury Secretary Steve T. Mnuchin and Secretary of Interior David L. Bernhardt on distribution of coronavirus relief fund dollars to Native American tribes. Okay, so here's what it said. Treasury would distribute 60% of the $8 billion or $4.8 billion to tribal governments. Okay. K talks a little bit more about the Navajo Nation share of 4.8. K says the Navajo Nation share of the 4.8 billion for coronavirus relief fund distributed from the U.S. Treasury on or about May 5th is $600,559,530.10. Okay, that's the exact dollar amount. So the Navajo Nation CARES Fund Act applies to the initial distribution of any subsequent distributions by the U.S. Treasury from the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Okay, the CARES Act expressly provides the Coronavirus Relief Fund shall be used to cover only the costs that are necessarily expenditures incurred to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 related purposes. The Navajo Nation Council therefore acknowledges and designates, if necessary, pursuant to its authorities. Okay, so it's kind of setting the guidelines for what's going on and how this is supposed to be sent. Okay, let's see. M says Navajo Nation Council finds it in the best interest of the Navajo Nation to act the Navajo Nation CARES Act Fund, which is they're amending Title 12 of the Navajo Nation Code and establishing Navajo Nation CARES Fund to be comprised of the Navajo Nation share of coronavirus relief fund from the U.S. Okay, this is pursuant to Title 5 of the CARES Act. So Navajo Nation Council further finds that because the coronavirus relief fund shall be used for expenditure through December, the end of this year, procurements expending these funds must be expedited, and the CARES Fund expense should not be subject to Navajo Nation procurement. Okay, so they're saying to bypass that procurement. So procurement is where you basically have to put bids to get some of this work done. Okay, so that's kind of what it's asking, or what they're requesting. Section 3, it says enacting the Navajo Nation CARES Act Fund and establishing the Navajo Nation CARES Fund. So this is getting into more details about the fiscal matters. Chapter 26, Navajo Nation CARES Fund Act. So this is just explaining more and more details, but a lot of the section that I talked about above is a lot of the specific details. If you take a look further into this, it talks about the purpose, expenditures of the funds. It also talks about, let's see, get a little bit further. People are texting me while I'm doing this. Okay, it talks about audits. And this is what I was talking about how Sean McCabe at McCabe CPA is looking at this. So here's an amendment. This act may be amended by a 2/3 vote of the full membership of the Navajo Nation Council, subject to action of the President of the Navajo Nation under 2 NNC subsection 221. Okay, B. So expenditure plan requirements and administration. Okay, getting to a little bit more of the expenditures and what it entails. Okay, but I mean, if you look at it, it has kind of been set aside. I mean, here's one section. It says specific purposes for which the requested funds will be used and detailed explanation of how such uses satisfy the criteria. Okay, if affirmation that the requested funds shall only be used for purposes specified in the Act, Navajo Nation Division, Department, Program, Chapter, Entity to which the appropriation are assigned and allocated. Okay, and I mean, it's very specific, and in a previous video I talked about that it's very similar to a regular grant that you receive, so there's a lot of, I guess you could say, red tape or a lot of structure to how those grants are just supposed to be utilized. Okay, but anyway, if you look at it, I mean, it's very detailed, and it kind of lays out some of the specifics of it, and you know, it's going to be approved by the Navajo Nation. And I did see that from today till the end of the year, they're saying the Navajo Nation would have to spend $3.5 to $4 million per day to fully utilize the $600 million that was sent to the Navajo Nation. Okay, so that's why this is pretty paramount. I have seen people commenting that, well, why are you allowing the people to comment? And I think that's one thing that's important, is because that's the way the comment period is with the way the government is set up. Okay, there is even comment periods for federal legislation, and just to hear what people have to say. Again, but it is up to council to see how this money is going to be spent. And there's actually, I've been seeing some comments on social media, Twitter and whatnot, where the president's office is not working with council or the three-branch government. So there's, maybe I'll make a video about that and explain the conflict that's going on with the way this comment period was discussed. Okay, so again, my name is Peter Deswood, and I'm just going through and explaining this resolution. It's the legislation number 0115-20, and the sponsor was Seth Damon. Okay, so this is, again, if you go to Navajo Nation Council, this is one of the resolutions that you can follow, and there's a whole list on the Navajo Nation website. So again, thank you. Yeah, have a good day.